Alright, so we got the 233 spoilers, and this chapter is incredibly exciting, and of course we're continuing the battle between Gojo and Sukuna in this one, because coming off of the previous chapter, we saw that Gojo was able to hit Sukuna in the back with a red blast, and then combo on top of that, and hit Sukuna with a freaking black flash that winds up knocking him out. Let me also make a correction on the black flash, what I was talking about in the previous review, because I said that the black flash multiplier was times 2.5, and that's just not correct. It's actually to the power of 2.5. So yeah, sorry about that, but also it kind of makes sense into what I was talking about before, because I was like, black flash seems too powerful to be just times 2.5, and yeah, it's because it's not. So understandable why he was able to knock out Sukuna the way that he did, but after he got knocked out, the Dharma Chakra wheel fell onto the ground, and out of the shadows came Maharaga and slashed Gojo across the chest. And that brings us into the beginning of this chapter, where we see everyone being worried to see Maharaga, but Yuji is still hopeful. He even says if Maharaga has adapted to infinity, it's still on equal footing with Gojo, and Gojo's wounds could be healed soon. So as we've seen in these last couple chapters, Maharaga has been slowly adapting to infinity, or limitless. And after successfully having his wheel spun 4 times, it seems that he has completely adapted to it. But as for Yuji saying that Maharaga is still on equal footing with Gojo, I guess that means that like they're both the same cursed energy wise, you know, just overall. Or I guess just where they stand currently as beings, because Gojo is obviously weakened. He's gassing at this point. So I guess that brings Maharaga up to his current level maybe. We then see a highly stressed Shoko, who has smoked a lot of cigarettes, and she says that Gojo's healing speed is getting slow. He can use reverse curse technique since he used red a while ago, but the output is decreasing and should be the same for Sukuna. So yeah, that was going back to what I was saying. Gojo is gassing, so is Sukuna. They've been fighting for a while here. And as for her saying that he could still use reverse curse technique since he can use red, and that's because both of these use positive cursed energy. The narrator says that even if the opponent is the strongest of all times, the king of curses, everyone thought it was impossible. They thought Gojo might lose. Even Gojo himself thought so. Gojo thinks, when was the last time he felt like this? And Toji immediately pops up in his mind. The narrator continues that even though the sign of losing is coming up, something else is swelling up more in Gojo. It's satisfaction, the loneliness that comes from being the strongest. What's filling him up now is... So I think we also talked about this before, maybe one of the first chapters of Gojo versus Sukuna, and it was that this is by far Gojo's toughest fight. Like by far the furthest anyone has pushed him. Like before that, the second closest had to have been Toji. Like that's how far ahead Gojo has been in the Jujutsu world, like his entire life. That before Sukuna, his toughest fight was Toji. And Toji did not nearly push Gojo as far as Sukuna is. Gojo quickly punches Maharaga in the face and pushes it back, making Maharaga choke. Gojo starts reciting the chants to restore his lowered output and proceeds to blast curse technique reversal red. But, so yeah, Gojo just punching Maharaga in the face, which of course is always an option. Like, Gojo can just fight against Maharaga with just a reinforced cursed energy body. Just because he's adapted to infinity doesn't mean that Gojo can't do anything to him. And as for Gojo reciting the chants, quote unquote, to restore his lowered output, this could be going back to what Orihime was doing maybe, back when they were charging up that hollow purple to launch at Sukuna in the very beginning of the fight. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is a virtual private network, or a VPN for short, which hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. And believe it or not, Private Internet Access also provides a tool that can help anime fans. And I'll get more into that later, but Private Internet Access is also a tool that helps you with your everyday life. Because whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network, your data is at risk of being stolen. That's why Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your your internet connection through their world-class server infrastructure, which makes your information shielded and bulletproof. You can also now use one private internet access subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. But that's not all, because private internet access also allows you to access region-restricted content from all over the world. Guys, we all love anime on this channel, and streaming services are notorious for region blocking certain anime. But you don't have to worry about that anymore, because private internet access helps you overcome these restrictions by giving you the option to change your IP address to one of their 84 countries to choose from, as well as all 50 US states, allowing you to gain access to websites and services that are only available in those locations. It's a great time to get private internet access because Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is currently airing. And if you already have Netflix like most of us, you don't have to go out of your way to get another streaming service just to be able to watch it. Because with private internet access, you can just switch your VPN to Japan and boom, you instantly have access to all of the new Jujutsu Kaisen and Big 3 episodes. So guys, you can get private internet access by clicking my link in the description. And by doing that, you're also going to get an 83% discount on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month. And you'll also get 4 extra months completely free. Thanks, guys. In my opinion, the whole chance thing here in Jujutsu Kaisen, which doesn't really get explored enough or really fully explained, I guess is Gege being inspired by Bleach with like their Hado incantations. It's similar in Bleach as well. Like, I guess if you don't read the data books, it's never really fully explained like what's going on with those incantations and why they work the way that they do. It's like finding some kind of like backdoor in the IRL code. But Sukuna regains consciousness and activates Megumi's rabbit escape technique. Gojo still blasts red, but just does damage to the surroundings. And Mahoraga escapes. Gojo realizes that Sukuna is protecting Mahoraga and using it for offense since it adapted to Infinity. So yeah, Sukuna is conscious again, and he uses the rabbit escape, which we've seen Megumi use multiple times, especially against Toji, very apropos. And as for Gojo using red against Mahoraga, I'm sure you're thinking like, wait, didn't he adapt to it? Because we saw Sukuna get hit with it in the previous chapter and the wheel spun. Well, that's going to be addressed a little later on. Sukuna throws a fire extinguisher towards Gojo and blasts it to make some smoke screen. While Mahoraga prepares to attack Gojo from above, Sukuna makes a posture and blasts a technique which Choso recognizes it to be piercing blood. So first of all, if you're like, wait, how does Sukuna know how to use a fire extinguisher or like what it is? Well, it turns out that like when these sorcerers from the past reincarnate into a new body, they take over the memories of that person. So if the person lives in the contemporary age the way that Megumi does, same thing with Yuji, Sukuna will, fully understand how life works in the modern age. And as for the whole piercing blood stuff, I know, I thought the same thing as you. Like, wait, Sukuna could just use any curse technique? Like, what's going on here? Well, it's not that. It's going to be explained. Just as Gojo defends against Mahoraga, Sukuna's attack lands on Gojo and wounds him. Gojo dodges Mahoraga and realizes that Sukuna is not supporting Mahoraga. But when it makes his infinity vanish, Sukuna will also attack. So it's like a 2v1 fight now. So yeah, this is really cool. This is what we've wanted. Like, I think it goes back to like 2 or 3 chapters ago when we first saw Mahoraga come out. I was like, why isn't he just double teaming Gojo? Well, he just wanted to wait until he was fully adapted to Limitless or in Infinity. And he's shooting him with the quote unquote piercing blood here right as Mahoraga's blade is making contact with Gojo. So I guess when Mahoraga hits Gojo, he's deactivating Limitless, and then we see the quote-unquote piercing blood hitting Gojo at that moment and like piercing his forearm, but it's not too bad. Gojo complains about Sukuna being able to use shikigami abilities without even having to summon them. The last attack now was just the water shooting technique from the Max Elephant shikigami, but in a piercing blood way. So yeah, that clears that up. Sukuna not using piercing blood, but using the fundamental of it. And instead of, firing blood the way that they do, he's firing the water from the Max Elephant shikigami. Really, really cool sequence here. I can't get enough of Sukuna utilizing the 10 shadows to the fullest here. And it's only just beginning. Gojo understands the reason Sukuna started using the shikigami is because he got more resources. And Mahoraga adapted to Infinity, but adapting to Red will take more time compared to blue, and Sukuna interrupts Gojo's thoughts, asking him not to misunderstand, because it's not a 2v1. But, now before we go further, this is explaining how Mahoraga hasn't adapted to red yet, because we saw Gojo was about to blast Mahoraga with red, and it's saying that he just needs more time, and that goes back to the previous chapter of them like wondering how Mahoraga's adaptation works. Is it like accumulated damage, or is it like just time? And Kashimo kind of gives a non-answer to that, as he says all we can say is that both are possible, and I guess that's still possible, but maybe leaning more so towards time experience, as it says. But anyway, as Sukuna was saying that it's not a 2v1, and that's because he's summoning a new shikigami named the Chimera Beast Agito. This seems to be a merge of new and totality. So like the owl shikigami and the wolf shikigami. But Sukuna didn't specifically say merge, but just chanted those two names first in the last page and then summon this new one. So now it's a 3v1. The Chimera Beast Agito and Mahoraga versus Sukuna. Now, going back into Sukuna's incredible use of the 10 shadows here, he can just merge the shikigami together and make chimeras out of them. Now, I don't know if he can just do it with all of them, but I mean, he can at least do it with new and totality. And it's making like this Mahoraga adjacent looking shikigami. Like, it's really cool. It's not exactly like Mahoraga. It's kind of like a female variant of him, but not exactly. And I don't know what its abilities are. I mean, maybe it has both new and totality's abilities at the same time, along with like a new one that it's come up with or something. But the word chimera is also interesting here, because the 10 Shadows domain expansion is called Chimera Shadow Garden. And I was always wondering, like, is Sukuna going to use that on Gojo? And it's like, can he even? Like, if you have multiple curse techniques, can you use multiple domain expansions? I mean, I guess because he's in the body of Megumi, he can use it, but we've seen Kenjaku, you know, in the body of Geto, not use Geto's domain expansion. Pretty sure it was implied that Kenjaku, when we saw his domain expansion, Womb Profusion, it was kind of like his own domain expansion. I could be wrong about that. But also, you know, we haven't seen Sukuna using Chimera Shadow Garden. He's just been using Malevolent Shrine, and there could be a reason for that. I mean, we kind of have to see Chimera Shadow Garden from Sukuna at this point, right? And man, if Sukuna uses that, I would really like to see how Gojo gets out of that, because Gojo would essentially be trapped in the shadows. And then, in theory, Sukuna could just summon all of the 10 Shadow Shikigamis at the same time, as well as like manipulating the shadows and whatever instant hit that it gets. Of course, Gojo can defend himself still, but man, it's really, you know, almost unbeatable at that point. But aside from that, he still has a large order on his plate, because he's taking on 2 of the strongest Shikigami we've seen so far and Sukuna. So 3v1. And they're all jumping on him. Like, this is a really cool sequence, and he's evading them all. Like, he is dipping and dodging 3 ultra powerful characters all the same time. But Sukuna pops out of Gojo's shadows and shoots the water-like piercing blood from the Max Elephant ability, but Gojo dodges that too. So yeah, amazing sequence like I was saying, and Sukuna is coming out of the shadow that Gojo's projecting on the ground and then firing at his back. Man, looks so good. But yeah, Gojo is able to avoid that as well. So while Gojo is doing really well in this 3v1 here, like I was saying with the Chimera Shadow Garden, I think that would be too much even for this specimen here. Gojo arrives behind Mahoraga and blasts red at it, but the damage is weak. Gojo thinks now he only has that to demolish Mahoraga in one shot. The charge is big, and Sukuna will be aware of it. But he says he's got no choice but to use an unlimited hollow technique. And that's where the chapter ends. So I guess this is coming to what we've been talking about for the last couple months now. And it's like, is Gojo going to use his maximum technique? And this isn't confirming it, of course, because he says an unlimited hollow technique. And we know that purple starts off with hollow technique, purple. Now, does that mean that he's going to use purple here because he says hollow technique? Maybe, but the way that hollow technique purple is presented, it implies that there are multiple hollow techniques, or at least that's just the way that it looks to me. So we could be seeing Gojo using some kind of new thing here. I mean, it would only make sense because I'm assuming that Gojo's time is coming to an end in the series soon. I could be wrong. But yeah, I'll go more into this chapter once we get to see all of the pages and everything, and once the chapter's fully released. So look out for that. And if you like the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.